Today, we've got a disturbing glimpse into what the next 4 years will look like now that Donald Trump won the election and his supporters feel emboldened. And get ready. My name is Brittany Page from the Page Perspective here on YouTube, and I am guest hosting today for Jesse because he is in Canada. That's right, he's on a panel talking about the 2024 election results in Canada for the Future Voters Summit. He's molding the young minds in Canada and helping to educate them about how important it is to be involved in politics. And I'm sure that he will fill you all in on the details when he's back, but thank you so much for joining me today. I've been talking about politics online for over 10 years. That's when Jesse and I started our podcast, I Doubt It, 10 years ago, pre-Trump. So it's interesting to trace the trajectory from then to now and how Donald Trump's entrance to the political scene has transformed our electorate and emboldened people to become just the absolute worst versions of themselves. They wear their flaws like badges of honor now instead of trying to do some internal work to improve themselves, like we all should, right? We're all flawed, but as a self-identified lifelong learner, I hope to always be growing, always be learning. That's what I hope to do anyway. But one person who's not interested in that is Laura Ndirangu, and she made an appearance at the Forest Lake Area Schools school board meeting on November 14th. And there's a clip of her making the rounds on social media because she is unhinged. And one important thing to know about her before you listen to her disturbing comments is that she just lost her own race for the school board. This is her campaign website, Make Public School Great Again, she writes. And down below that, she gives a little bio of herself and calls herself a conservative patriot and highlights her support for parents' rights in education. All of this is signaling to other Trump supporters that, she's a Trump supporter and will champion their goals and their values. She also says, by the way, that she's a registered nurse, which when you hear some of this hateful rhetoric about to come out of her mouth, it is truly stunning to imagine her in a position to be providing life-saving care to other human beings. So we're going to see Laura at the microphone giving her feedback on some policies that she takes issue with, specifically related to policies on harassment in the school district. You may be able to predict where some of this is headed, but get ready because it goes off the rails pretty quickly. Watch this.
Well, thank you so much for the opportunity. I didn't know it would go at the beginning. I thought maybe it would be at the time you discuss it. So I was just reviewing the agenda before tonight, and I was reading the policy on harassment. And I just wanted to share some concerns. I understand there might be some legislative statute that you're trying to meet with the language, but you do have a policy 515. It's pretty well written that address these issues as well. But there are some differences in the language that bring some concern to me that they might end up being interpreted in a way that could violate religious freedom or freedom of speech because it's so general in it. To give you an example, so a religious freedom would be that I teach my children that they are not to use pronouns. They are not to identify themselves by pronouns.
So this is very typical, right? She says, I teach my children that they are not to use pronouns. While of course she's using a pronoun in that sentence. And then she says, they are not to identify themselves by pronouns while she's identifying them by pronouns. Laura, please. Make public education great again. They is a pronoun. Can conservatives please stop failing basic grammar to own the libs? It gets much, much worse. Like that was a moment of levity. It's going to get worse. And you're actually going to hear several bleeps in this next clip. And that's because with how hateful this clip is, if we were to play it unbleeped, the video would be restricted. And that's just the YouTube algorithm at work. So you're going to be able to tell quickly what she's saying from the context, but just beware of the bleeps and beware that this is going to be hateful. Watch this.
They are not to identify themselves by pronouns. They are not to call somebody other than they are. I understand that other people don't believe that, but that is our firmly held belief that, you're born male or female. And so if my child accidentally called somebody, even not even intentionally, called somebody the wrong thing, according to this policy language, that could be interpreted as harassment, and all kinds of things. So I just see a way, like, I am totally supportive in creating a great place for everybody, but I just think we have to be cautious that it's not going to violate religious freedoms and freedom of speech. An example of a violation of freedom of speech, I recently learned from one of my kids in high school that a word that I regularly use, that I think is a regular word, is apparently on the don't use list. So I learned that from my high school children, which is the word means slow. It's in the dictionary. It literally, you know, retardant, slows down fires. And I did not realize, no, you cannot control my speech, Mr. Raphael. So you cannot. I can use the word, okay? So this is one of those violations of freedom of speech that really concern me. So I really think there needs to be a lot more caution placed on specific parameters so that you respect those other constitutional rights. Thank you.
Just remarkable in the worst way. I mean, at a loss for words. And I love that she had the audacity to say, like, I'm totally supportive of creating a great place for everybody, before launching into a tirade about how her rights are being violated because she is what? Judged for using hateful language? Laura, you can use whatever words you like. Stated another way, you are free to use whatever speech you like, but you will receive consequences for that speech. Like that entire room of people stunned by your ignorance, some of them laughing at you, in your desperate attempt to cling to a word, to make it a feature of your personality that you are going to continue to use a word that is not necessary, and for many, offensive. What is this recalcitrance and refusal to be simply decent? What are you losing by dropping a single word from your vocabulary that could potentially hurt another person? I mean, genuinely, what is the loss for you? To use someone's pronouns, to call them by their preferred name, to not use a slur. What is that taking away from you? You are not, Laura, you are not, in fact, totally supportive of creating a great place for everyone. And I find it a horrifying thought to imagine you caring for patients in a hospital. What if you have a trans patient? What if you have a patient with developmental disabilities? If this is your general approach to life, I hate to think of what your approach in your work is, the lack of respect that you show to people who are people, who deserve compassion, who should receive compassion and courtesy. It's easy to do. It violates my freedom of speech to not say hateful things. No, it doesn't, Laura. Grow up. Or at the very least, listen to your kids. Let us know what you think. Call us, 714-576-4054, or send an email to daily@dollemore.com. You can support this channel by becoming a channel member for as little as $1.99 a month by clicking the join button below, or by going to patreon.com/idoubtitpodcast. I'm so happy you've joined me to cover the news today, and I will look forward to seeing you tomorrow as well. As Jesse would say, be genuine and take care of one another.